Hey, everybody, it's Jeff here once again with the Sense of Things and Ron Lang. And we are going to knock it out today. We've got another great week ahead of us. A lot of economic data this week, a lot of interesting economic data, I will say. And we'll also be starting off with a current event, or it's not even a current event. It's just something that came out of something I found today when I was on there. Ron, how you doing, bud?
Good morning. Doing very well. Lots of fun economic data coming out this week. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to sift through it all prior to the podcast.
Yeah, it was a little nuts. There's so much coming at us this week and trying to be able to sift through it and say, okay, this is what's important. This isn't. A lot of the data that I pulled this week were things that there was a lot of reports, but anything that was just in line, I didn't really pull up. And I just put the ones that were really out of line with the expectations. But wanted to get us started off this week with a current event. We've talked a lot of Florida man stories, and I was sitting there this morning and said, you know what? I haven't looked up the Darwin Awards in a while. So I looked up Darwin Awards and I was reading through them, and they were a bit gruesome, I think, for the show. But I was able to find this rather interesting photo.
Before you show that, why don't you explain to the audience what the Darwin Awards are?
The Darwin Awards are the award to the person each year, or persons each year, who contribute to taking their DNA out of the gene pool by doing something incredibly stupid.
Of course.
That said,
that is the backdrop.
That is the backdrop for this. I think this is a future Darwin Award.
Oh, God. So that's how we get the crack in our rear end.
That's exactly right. I think the important things is I was looking
at this. This can't be real.
I was looking at all of this. It's far enough in there that I'm like, okay, we're going to be in a little ugly. I'm laughing to myself that, one, I've always been a fan of the This Old House show. And one of the things they've always said is you've got to wear eye protection. And the guy down below is not wearing eye and ear protection. The guy above, though, is wearing ear protection. And my thought process is to eliminate the screaming as he keeps working on this thing.
It's got to be a setup photo. Look, there are a lot of stupid people in this world, but give me a break.
But I'm just saying, it could be a Darwin Award down the road.
Hey, is the guy on the bottom, was he in one of our mugshots last week?
I think he was. And the funny part is we got a few answers. And if you remember, if you guys watched the show last week, there was, I think, number 12 or 11 who had a weird part of his head missing. Yes. He was the top choice for the face of the week. So that was...
I got some people that have been sending me some comments. We'll see where we are by next week.
All right. So let's get into a little bit of the economic data that I wanted to share, and then this will dovetail into what Ron wanted to talk about. Interesting. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's been in the mortgage business for 40 years. And he was telling me yesterday, these numbers came out earlier this week on the 13th. So yesterday, and the mortgage applications now are at the lowest point ever in his 40-year time in the mortgage business. And Danny is funny. He was saying, he goes, you know, I was talking to somebody the other day and they said, hey, you're pretty much retired from the mortgage business. And he said, no, the mortgage business kind of retired me at this point with just how much the interest rates have pressed down on all this. So I have a feeling this is really going to start having some effects on the residential real estate eventually. What's buoying, I think, residential real estate, and this is what we came up with, is the new home builders, because they're able to go in and buy down rates, which people are buying a lot of new homes, but the existing homes are really starting to slow. And in areas like we have, a lot of people are moving here, and that's keeping the real estate prices pushed up because we just don't have that much inventory. And I'm assuming probably by you, same thing.
Yeah, look, there's always that lag effect with the interest rate hikes for credit tightening. I had heard the credit tightening going back probably to June and July. The mortgage market was still okay, but basically what the banks are doing, they can't show that they have seized up the machine of lending. All they're doing is lending less.
Yeah.
You know, instead of 30 or 40 loans, they're doing 10.
Yeah.
whatever it may be. And obviously they're cherry picking the best 10.
Mhm. Absolutely. All right. So from that, I wanted to go to CPI this week. We had seen a trend of CPI going down or starting to show some signs of going down. And then this week it was a absolute pop in the other direction, both month to month and year over year. Year over year was basically in line, but month to month was actually significantly higher. In addition to that, the X food and energy. So this is interesting that the federal government, and I think we've talked about this before, the federal government, they say we only look at what they call core CPI, which is taking out food and energy because it's so volatile. We still all have to spend money on food and energy
every day.
and those things trickle down to the rest of the economy. So I don't understand why they removed them years ago, but it's showing signs of picking up the other way. And we got PPI this morning, and that it was even worse of a situation. Consensus was around 0.4 for the month to month. It was at 0.7, so almost double what was expected. Year over year, 1.6. That's all going to start to trickle back down to the consumer on the other end of it. Yeah. Any comments on that, Ron? Your thoughts?
Whenever you're watching any of the financial networks and they're bringing on all these people right before the employment number and the PPI and the CPI number, and they're coming up with it and they're fixing their hair and they're doing their makeup and they're adjusting. And I'm thinking to myself, nothing.
Yeah.
I love what I say. I put the information into my models.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you what, if you're wrong, you lose a finger. How about that?
Yeah,
I don't know how they keep their job. That's why I've said this before. If I come back reincarnated someday, I want to come back as one of three things. Obviously, coming back as a rock star would be terrific. One of them would be to be a meteorologist. Mm-hmm. I want to be a stock analyst or an economist.
Yeah.
Because you could be wrong 50% or more of the time and still keep your job.
Absolutely.
So that's why when I see these consensus ranges, look how broad they are. Even on the CPI, they were still pretty broad ranges. But here's the other fun thing, and we talked about this last week. These are going to be revised over the next several quarters and several years. So that's why we all know this without getting into it. It's politically motivated sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like, it's amazing how they withhold some numbers and then they come out next quarter, whatever the case may be. So with all these things, we got a Fed meeting coming up in a couple of weeks. You and I both know they have the real data, right? And that's what they're reacting on. So when I see stuff like this, you know what? Things are still hot. Things are still too high, and the consumer is still struggling, period. Yeah. They may be spending money, but that doesn't mean they're not struggling.
And going into that point, looking at retail sales this morning, another big blasting number coming in. Consensus 0.2, retail sales came in 0.6, and even X vehicles came in 0.6. The consumer is still spending money at this point, but I think as we roll through the rest of this and get into your part of it, the other side of the coin is yes, they're spending, but what does it look like in the future here?
Look at the consensus. Hold on, go back. Look at the consensus range for retail sales. Do you realize every 0.1% how many tens of millions of dollars that represents?
Yep.
How far off these economists are to be like this? Okay, so it was within range, but was above consensus. Mm-hmm. What are we saying here?
Yeah.
But the other big thing that came out, and I know we talked about this in the pregame, the biggest issue that the majority of the major retailers have come out, and there's only a couple of retailers that are doing very well. Mm-hmm. Target is going down. Yeah. Walmart is near an all-time high. Mm-hmm. Same consumer. Please figure that out for me. But my point is, all the retailers that have been coming out, their number one theme, number one concern is stealing. Mm-hmm. It is eating away at their bottom line. And this has been going on and getting worse for several years. Yeah. But meanwhile, nothing's being done about it.
Yeah, and it's accelerated.
More security, more cameras. That's only going to hurt the bottom line that much more.
Yeah. In some areas of the country, I know when we were traveling here recently, I don't see it as much in Texas because you would literally, if you tried to steal something, you'd probably get shot. But
open carry.
Yeah, it's open carry, and chances are you could get shot. Plus, I just think people respect law enforcement a little bit more here, and they know law enforcement isn't going to they're not going to roll over, nor are the local DAs. But you have some of these cities. We were traveling recently, and I literally walked into a Walgreens just to get something, and I literally had to get somebody to unlock a cabinet to get like a thing of razor blades, like $10 thing
That's
of
been in the
razor blades.
supermarkets like that for several years, rather ironically.
Yeah, it's hilarious. So it's okay. It's like going into a museum. You can't get to the things you need. And I don't want to shop someplace where I have to, okay, now I need to go over here and have you unlock this so I can get this piece of it. And it's ridiculous. It's gone just off the
Quick
charts.
fun fact in history. Sam Walton, who
Mhm.
started Walmart.
Yep.
The reason why he took off and was so successful was because the way retail was done prior to 1960-ish was when you went into a store and you wanted to see something, you had to have someone behind the counter get that for you.
Yeah.
He said, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. You can't service everybody that's coming in effectively. So let's get rid of the counters, let people get their own stuff and go from there. So Sam Walton was the pioneer in that way to do more self-service versus you need someone behind the counter. We may end up going back.
We're going back.
Yeah, we may go back there. Who knows?
It's amazing. The last thing I wanted to share was business inventories. And I think this is a telling thing. So the consumer is still spending tons of money, but businesses, I don't think, are believing it at this point. We've had 2 months in a row that are just absolutely 0% growth in business inventory. So they're not declining, they're not increasing, they're just sitting flat, and they have for the last 3 months straight at this point. And that tells me that they're literally running just in time across the board when you start to look at business inventories.
Yeah, I didn't have the chart this time. I do have the chart. I didn't prepare it. One of the interesting things about businesses, it's the second highest amount of business bankruptcies through the first 8 months of the year in the last 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah, you shared that with me via text this week. So yeah.
I know, but I just saw the numbers last week. I'll do the chart next week.
Yeah.
But I saw this number, and the way it's been trending in the last 4 months is pretty insane.
Yeah. Oh,
that's telling us something too. And
Yeah.
that the other thing too is they can't get money. They can't get lending. They can't get money from the banks.
Absolutely.
All right. So let me share my screen here. Let me know when you see it.
Got it.
All right. So I know it's almost ad nauseum. This is our monthly chart here. But what I wanted to show here is that we've seen a little bit of a bottoming when it comes to the 2 and the 10-year spread, and then what the Fed likes to watch, which is the 10-year and the 3-month Treasury. So the reason why I wanted to show this is because we have shown no sign of this abating really going up more towards the positive level and getting more of a positive yield curve. We still have the negative yield curve, and obviously we've just seen things stabilize on both sides. We still believe this is an ominous sign. Whether or not we do or don't go into retirement, we're still going to feel the negative effects of the inverted yield curves on both of these sides, and we're seeing it in a lot of the charts that you just shared and stuff that we've gone through over the last several months. Now, the next thing I wanted to show, and I showed this once before, but obviously this has been updated. This is really showing the 3 major markets. The blue line is the SPY. That's the S&P 500. The green line is the RSP. That is the equal weighted S&P 500. Okay. As we know, to ad nauseum, we know that the S&P 500, it's 8 stocks that have been pretty much led most of the charge this year. Obviously, those 8 stocks are in the equal weighted, the RSP. But here's the interesting thing. The IEV, that's the European fund. And the FXI is the Chinese. Look at where they've been since the pandemic.
Yeah.
They've gone basically nowhere. I think there's 3 or 4 countries now in Europe that are in a recession. Obviously, we know China's hurting, and they've decided to take some economic data off the table and not share. If they're starting to do that, we know it's a lot worse than what we know and what they're sharing. Even though we've always said you can't believe most of their numbers anyway. But obviously with their markets, remember, we trade a lot of those companies on our exchanges.
Mhm.
So my whole point is, look at that Chinese market. If you go back, they're still at a 10-year low.
Yeah.
Does this make sense? I know the infamous thing is when we sneeze, the rest of the world gets a cold. Is it going to be the reverse this time?
Yeah.
If Europe and China, which obviously are two of our biggest trade partners, and we get 80% of our hard goods manufactured in China coming
Mhm.
here, what is this saying?
Yeah.
So obviously every chart tells a story. This is the second time I've showed this in the last 3 or 4 months. It hasn't changed all that much.
Mm.
So I think we should monitor this to see what happens. I think IEV, the European index, is going down because obviously you just can't have 3 or 4 countries in Europe that are only in a recession. It's contagion. It's going to spread throughout the entire continent.
Well, and they run a common economy across the board. They effectively rob from the rich and give to the poor in a lot of cases through the European Union. What affects one is going to affect all of them in the end.
Yep.
There's just some economies that are a little bit stronger, like Germany and France and Italy.
But Germany's in a recession. They were the first country in Europe to go into a recession.
Yeah, and they're the ones that have been the powerhouse that have been dragging Europe along. Until they can clear things up, it's going to be a challenge. And I've been to Europe this last year, going back a little bit later on this year, and just going over there listening to the news. You know, they're in England, especially looking at, okay, now maybe we need to get back into the European Union because the Brexit thing didn't work. Well, okay, I don't think it's going to be any better if you're part of the European Union.
Now, I mean, look, and you said it about Germany. They are a manufacturing and a financial juggernaut. And it's really 3 main countries in Europe, right? It's Germany, it's France, and it's Britain.
Yep.
Right. They're the rest of them, they're there. But you get the Northern Europeans and the Southern. The Northern Europeans are the workers, the Southern Europeans are the vacationers.
Yes.
So if you've already got 2 or 3 of those countries, the Northern Europeans in a recession, they're not going on vacation to Southern Europe.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there will be contagion there, and we're already out of the summer.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
You're seeing a lot of political strife in France because, God forbid, the government said, "Hey, we can't afford for everybody to retire at age 60, so we need you to bump that back to 62," and everybody went apeshit.
Oh yeah, the unions and everything else. Look what's going on right now. We'll have to see what happens tomorrow
UAW
with or today. I'm sorry, today with
tonight,
UAW, right?
midnight.
Isn't that today?
Yeah, it's midnight tonight.
14th.
Yep.
Yeah. And it seems like both sides have drawn a line in the sand. So you get ready within a week. If nothing gets resolved, get ready for the presidential administration to get involved.
Yes, absolutely.
And they're using the UPS union as a template for this, which we all knew what was going to happen.
Absolutely. And like I said, I think some of the demands for the UAW, yes, I believe that you should get paid a fair wage and everything else, but some of the demands are just off the charts.
Yeah.
We want part of these profits from the companies. You're going to ensure that there's no more profits left after this.
And we talked about this with UPS. Look, there's a reason for the unions. I get that. But at the end of the day, there's no risk to them.
Nope.
Because if the economy and the business takes a 20 to a 30% dump, they're still making their money, which means what are they going to do now? Well, the company can't afford to continue to pay, so now they got to have layoffs. And what does the union don't want? They don't want layoffs. Their job is to keep everybody working at the highest rate possible. They have no skin in the game to the company's success. Period.
Absolutely not.
All right. 2 other quick charts.
Okay.
We've shown this chart before.
Good.
And this chart's going back almost 30 years. We've talked about credit card rates, and for whatever reason, in the last 6 months to a year, credit card carryover balance rates have spiked. And the crazy thing about this is that I was pounding the table to say, why isn't Congress getting involved here? That this is egregious. This is insane. And even if it was still at 16%, the person that's got the average credit card balance isn't paying it off. We already know that credit card balances just breached the $1 trillion balance level, and it's not getting better. And it went up from 925 billion in December to 8 months later, where it's over $1 trillion. Now, how much more are the credit card companies going to make if now the balance and now the credit card rate is almost an average of 21%? So I had to, I look, you know how I feel about politicians in general, but I saw this article the other day. I had to bring it up because I had to give this politician kudos. Josh Hawley of Missouri basically is trying to introduce a bill to cap high credit card interest rates. And I don't know what other politicians are involved, because obviously he couldn't have done it on his own. But I had to give him at least kudos for trying to do something about it, because I would say the only reason why he could do it is because he probably wasn't getting any lobbyists to give him any money from the credit card companies. So I don't know who else is going to get behind it, but I would love to see the politicians that don't get behind this, or to some effect to help cap and help out the consumer. Because like I said, even at 15 or 16%, these consumers are still struggling to pay the minimum balance. And now we got the student debt they're going to have to pay starting next month. So this is a start, but I don't know if this thing is going to be DOA, if it gets any traction whatsoever. I don't know how you feel about it.
I think for too many years, the credit card companies have basically had a free reign because they just
run a roughshod.
And I largely blame our president in the fact that he's from Delaware, and where are most of the credit card companies? In Delaware. He was in the Senate for 40 some odd years and never said a word about it. I don't always agree with her, but I think Elizabeth Warren at least has tried to keep pounding the table. It's exciting to see that Josh Hawley has stepped in. If they can start getting a coalition of people together to say, we've got to stop this. I just think there's so much other noise that does this just fall by the wayside because it's not something that, okay, yes, I'm making it better for people, but it's not giving them money and all this, it's become kind of, elections have become whatever money you can get. What are you going to give me for me to give you the vote at this point?
This all kind of plays into our national debt and the consumer debt. It's been rising at a breakneck pace. And I don't see it abating in the right direction anytime soon.
And the interesting thing is how it changed so drastically during the pandemic, which you would have thought during the pandemic, everybody's pulling back because the economy's pulled back and all that. And it's just gone off the charts. It's really seriously gone off the charts in that time period. And then adding to this, okay, now we're going to charge you 26% on a credit card. I mean, literally every 4 years that amount doubled.
If during the Fed meeting next week, they talk about debt, consumer debt, and things like that, because they do get a bit into economics, especially in the Q&A. But I'd like to see it be addressed, because I think this is really the bigger albatross moving forward, the national debt and the consumer debt more than anything else. And if the banks aren't lending, then how are people going to get ahead? It's fair. I hate to just be in an echo chamber here, but it is fairly ominous.
It's bad. And I think it's going to continue to get worse and worse as you go on, because I think people don't realize, but first off, I'm sure most people aren't even looking at their credit card bill to see what the interest rate is right now. They're just spending money. And as long as they have room on the credit card, it's like the old joke. I just kept writing checks on my checking account until they started bouncing. It's okay. Just because you still have checks left doesn't mean that you're...
I did a survey in a couple of seminars that I've spoken at in the past, and the common theme is about 8.5 out of every 10 people don't even balance their checkbooks. So if you're not even balancing your checkbooks or ticking off what checks clear, how are you paying attention to the rest of your finances?
You're not. And most people don't. I find that when I talk to people, I do financial planning and I talk to people about, what do you spend monthly? Oh, about $4,000. Okay. So you make $12,000 a month. You spend $4,000 a month. Where's the extra $8,000? Oh, you're not saving it. So where exactly is it going? It's just evaporating miraculously.
I know. It's amazing how many holes I'm doing the same thing. I ask people the same questions and I'm like, wait a minute, you should have an extra 50,000 of cash surplus a year. You have $5,000 in your bank account. What are you spending money on?
Where is this going?
Crazy. Like I said, the next couple of weeks will get interesting. So I think we say this almost every week, but get your popcorn ready.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll have a lot of economic numbers this month. You got a Fed meeting next week. So we'll be reporting, I think if I remember correctly, they're Tuesday on the Fed meeting, if I'm correct. So we should have stuff coming out of the Fed meeting. This morning, the European Central Bank raised rates another quarter point. So that makes them even with us now to 11. Do we push it to 11 just like on the movie?
Spinal Tap. I hear you. Actually, at this point, dude, I think we're going to 12.
I think so too. I don't see it stopping with CPI and PPI. I just don't see it stopping. They may pause for a month or so, but I just don't see it stopping at this point.
Look, and a lot of the very smart people that I follow, many of them, I'm shocked because look, they're all predicting the same stuff you and I are, but many of them are saying it would be a mistake to raise it another quarter point. And I'm like, really? I don't see how a quarter point's going to make a significant difference, but I don't know.
There's that breaking point. We just reach a point where it's the breaking point. But like you were saying when we got on originally, this morning, the markets are all up. I look at most of this data is not really good for the future, and the markets are up, which I guess they're all keying off of that, the consumer spending number at this point.
Well, I think that, and also market historians always say, when we're nearing the end of the rate, that's when the market that's the time to get in, the end of the rate hiking cycle.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but the lag effect, the economy, it hasn't reached its depth. The tentacles haven't been stretched out as far as they should. And if you truly are a market historian, yes, the market goes up well before the end of the cycle, before it goes down. A lot of this, as we know, is just a lot of computerized trading off of economic numbers. Yep. So we'll see how the market closes today going into the Fed meeting next week.
Absolutely. And a lot of it trading off of Twitter or X, and you could say they're actually all on X at this point.
Yes. So yeah, you actually use Twitter as a verb. Hey, did you tweet? Yeah. What are you saying? Hey, did you X?
Did you X today? Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know. I love Elon, but I don't know. I think he's lost his mind at this point. Who knows?
I don't just anything he names. That's the challenge that he has, because you've seen his kids' names.
Well, you got SpaceX, you got the Tesla X, now you got Twitter, or X Twitter now.
Twitter X. It should have just been Twitter X. It would have made it much easier and simpler.
Crazy. All right.
All right. Thanks a lot, folks. We do this every week for you. Make sure that if you haven't, go back, watch the previous episode, and just if you need to, just watch the first few minutes. We'd love your vote on the photo of the week, of the unique photos that Ron put on there. And if you hadn't seen it yet, you just need to watch it for that one very thing, because it's hilarious.
Episode 22.
Episode 22. We do this every week for you, so let us know. Make sure you give us an upvote, subscribe, or give us a comment so that we know you're out there and that you're watching. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys back here the very next time.